when in my 30s, I was still just expecting an unkind and unaccepting world with rejection and isolation and ostracization and so on. But the violence, the flagrant hate, the divisiveness of our society, and the ability for people to feel like they can impose hate and aggression on people who they disagree with without consequence is something that I never would have imagined existing as much as it does today. Hello, fellers and dwellers. Welcome to Dwell On It, a series where I, Taylor, answer your questions about my lived experience as a trans woman. If you're new to the channel, I just explained the premise right there, where people like yourself ask me questions and they send them to me by comments in other videos or by DMs or what have you, typically about questions that are curious about myself as a trans individual or things about the trans community, sometimes about politics or current events or whatever it may be, and sometimes it's just random nonsense too, which just makes things fun because you get a little humanization out of the conversations too. So if you'd like to participate, please make sure to include yourself with questions in, as I mentioned, those previous places, or stay subscribed so you can hear the questions that other people ask and hear them answered accordingly in upcoming episodes too. So make sure to hit that subscribe button wherever it is on this screen here. It might be up here depending on the platform you're looking at. Please make sure to hit like as well if you enjoy the content. It absolutely does me a solid by giving the algorithms, I guess we can say, a tiny nudge about showing that this is content that YouTube and other social media platforms, of course, too, are incentivized to promote, right? And then what that does is it helps just get this visibility, get this conversation into the awareness of other people who probably would be best served by hearing about the life of a trans individual. And of course, please make sure to share this too. Talking about making sure other people can see it, one of the best direct actions you can do, hit the share button. Take this content, put it on your social media feeds, send it to friends by text or emails, whatever, and help me out. My reach is only as far as I could reach. It's something I say all the time, and realistically, I can't speak to people who I'm not able to get access to, and that's where you come in and you help me out a total ton. So like I said, like, share, subscribe. I like to start episodes as well with the visual description, and what that's for is it's largely for people who are either visually impaired or sometimes when people are just listening to this, have an open tab on their browser. And so with that, I am in my living room, which also doubles as my gym and my office. I joked last week that it was also sometimes my bedroom. Slept a little more lately. But otherwise, with that, beige walls. It's not as bright of a day as usual, but it is midday, so there's a little bit of sunlight coming through the blinds behind me. I've got a mirror on the wall, and behind me as well are my 3 pieces of cardio equipment, where the rest of my gym is pretty much off camera here. But I've got an elliptical, a treadmill, and a recumbent bike. An air conditioner is currently off, and as we can tell, I am certainly looking like it's muggy in here, and it's showing, right? I've got a blue/purple based color palette for my makeup. I have supposed to be straightened hair swept over the left side of my face. It's long, it's blonde, it's down past my armpits, but you can see that the humidity is starting to act up. I've got 3 piercings underneath my right eye, small, medium, large, going outwards towards a cluster earring at the top of my right ear with 2 stud piercings. We can only see one because of my hair. I've got a nose piercing as well. I'm a white 6'1" transgender woman. I am very much a hand talker, so you could see gray, dark gray matte nails with a lot of glimmer, bling, and some chrome pinky tips as well. So if those get distracting, that's on me. Sorry about that. I think that sums things up. Otherwise, as I said, my name is Taylor. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is Treaty 1 territory. And let's get right into this episode and see what we can put together with this week's questions. What do you wish you learned before you transitioned? There's nothing that I really sit with angst about not knowing something from the before times to today. However, funny, I was talking to a friend about this a couple days ago, just in passive conversation. What I would have enjoyed having an opportunity more for, I'm no stranger to being around women, right? I've been in more than enough relationships to say that I understand how women live. Married, divorced, long-term relationship going, I think it was just shy of a decade. No stranger to being around women and how women function. But what I never did is, try to passively absorb things about, kind of like just the nuances of life sometimes. Funny. So I was mentioning in last week's episode about things that are stereotypically, defined to a gender or something like that. I'll put a link to that episode right here while we're at it. But, there's a lot of things where, whether it was my ex-wife or, ex-girlfriends or family members of them, whether it were sisters or cousins or whatever, right? They'd be talking amongst themselves about, things that are neat or cool, or, hey, I like your hair, or blah, blah, blah. And it's things like that where I never connected myself to, hearing some of those things, because I never imagined myself to be where I am today, right? I'm not inspired to go ahead, try different hairstyles or different makeup types or try different clothing trends or whatever, but that's also because I'm just also not interested in going through any of the trial and error type of stuff either. So it's not necessarily about things that I wish I learned, but if I allowed myself to be more receptive to those things, and I shouldn't say not allowed myself, but if I told myself that being more receptive and just keeping an ear open to those types of things, just over the course of life, probably would have, just added a little more, I guess, versatility to my life, I guess. I don't know. I'm super happy with everything as it is, right? Like, I don't sit and wonder, how am I going to do my hair today? Or, what type of makeup am I going to put on? Or what clothes am I going to wear? Or what should I do for a workout? Or whatever. I don't sit and wonder how to do things in a certain way. It's just, like I said, just those little passive things to just kind of capture just through just the subtleties of life, right? Of just having, the casual small talk, the little conversations, the things that are interesting to other people that you don't know are interesting to you unless someone else brings them up, and those types of things. If it amounts to anything too, like when I started to, come to terms with, accepting myself, I was falling prey to this notion of, well, you have to talk like this and you have to walk like that. And I was spending so much time and energy and effort of trying to emulate these policies. Stand up and shoulders back and chest out a little bit and one foot in front of another, and you have to speak a certain tone in a certain sort of way and make sure to do this and smile when people look at you. Fuck it. Right? A lot of the things about me, everything about me is better framed, is all natural. I certainly adapted a couple of things as life has gone on because it just, matches me much more accurately. But I don't wish that I learned something earlier or sooner or however it goes, because I love who I am. I love what I bring to the table every single day, and I can't say that there's anything that I'm lacking or wanting to do better at or wishing I could have as part of my repertoire or so on that has anything to do with my transition at all. Have you ever made something that you're really proud of? Yeah, my budget calendar. I know it's kind of a weird answer, but when it comes to my budget, and don't get me wrong, I'm the farthest thing from financially secure. I want to make sure that's very, very clear. Lots of times you see things about budgets, and they often promote things like envelope style budgets, where you take your income and you take X amount of dollars and you put it into whatever, and then you take X amount of dollars for this other thing and you put it into whatever, and those are the things that you do, and da-da-da-da-da. One of the challenges when it comes to something like that is there has to be an exceptional amount of diligence that this money goes into this thing because this thing requires X amount of dollars and don't touch it. However, if it's there and it's not getting used and you're like, I need that money, right? It's there. So the envelope budget system, I kept trying to work with it and it was never working for me, but I didn't know how to escape it either because that was the only thing that I could ever find when I would be looking for budget advice, especially when I was starting to realize that money sucks. This was a few years ago. There was a time where I was like, okay, this isn't good, right? I'm going to have to start selling some things or whatever it may be. And I want to fully acknowledge that there are people who are in very, very, very underprivileged positions compared to myself. So I want to make it exceptionally clear that even though where I was considering myself to be struggling financially, it's without having to, start selling off things that I had or whatever. I still have material goods that are still worth something on Kijiji or whatever. I could sell one of those if I had to or so on. So I want to make sure that's clear and I fully acknowledge that. But I'm trying to figure it out and it's why isn't this working for me? And I knew the answer, like I said, is if I had money for laundry, but I needed to go grocery shopping, then I just told myself that I'll just do laundry next time and da-da-da. So that envelope budget system never worked. What I ended up creating, which worked really well for myself, especially considering that, my job as a data analyst, that's the thing I do. I analyze data. I came across a calendar. There was an app too. I wish I could name it just to give it as a courteous plug. I can't remember what it was called, but it mirrored what I was doing. So I'm sure they did it first, but I made something that worked for me in Excel. What I ended up creating was a budget calendar. I have it designed all the way up to 2027 because that is when the end of my last loan goes to. What I've done is I've got all of my routine payments as is, right? Whether it's, my rent, whether it's my phone, whether it's my utilities, and so on. And things that I know are routine scheduled payments, I already have allocated and obligated going forward. I've also tried to account for inflation to the best I can without putting too much effort into it, to be honest, but using, a trend from history, knowing like, okay, what was last year's hydro rate compared to this year's and so on. And then always assume that it's costing more. And I've also not given that same assumption with my paychecks though. So while I've got my expenses increasing, because you would expect that to happen, I have not touched my income. I have not assumed any increase in income, and I would only adjust that in my budget calendar should that happen. So by doing that, what I've also created by making this system all the way into 2027 is not necessarily about allocating X amount of dollars for this, make sure to have X amount of dollars every month for laundry and every X amount of dollars for the phone bill and every X amount of dollars for the thises and the thatses and the who's and the what's-its. But knowing that until the end of my calendar, I have X amount of dollars, period. Spend it on whatever you want, but you only have that much money until you have more money. Because with that calendar too, I've put in 2 things to monitor where it shows me the lowest dollar value in the month. So especially if there was ever like a bad calculation or like a crazy expense that came out of nowhere that I didn't have in savings or whatever, that would send me less than what I've got projected, then I know it's like, oh, I have to find $20. I have to find $20 so that I don't go below zero in this period. Or whatever. And sometimes it's as simple as just shuffling some numbers around, which is what helps me a ton. Because even though I might have no money to spend in a certain period of time, I've got plenty of money to spend. It just need to move it from my savings account or whatever it would be to just be there until I can put it back later. It's all making sense in my head, but I'm really proud of it because it helps me a ton. And then also, like I said, from the monthly minimum, it also shows the minimum values in my checkings and savings account for the rest of the calendar. So that kind of goes back to what I'm saying about it shows me I've got X amount of dollars until I need more dollars. So use as an example, if my calendar, for example, just happens to say the lowest amount in my savings account is 5 cents, even though that's at some time in 2026, for example, what that means is that between now and that time in 2026, if no other expenses happened and if no other income showed up, and all of my everythings just happened as is in my calendar, if between now and then I spent 10 cents, I am now 5 cents in the hole, which is going to cost me $5. So I only have 5 cents to spend. I know I'm sounding kind of petty with those dollars, but I think that kind of helps make sense where it's just, this shows me that at some point in the future, if I don't act on it, I'm going to end up being in the negative. So fix it now, or, shuffle some things around where move things from your savings and then push them back later after the next paycheck that happened or whatever. I'm so happy with it. It has helped me so much in having a lot more control of knowing where my finances are, because that was one of my biggest challenges a few years ago, especially. I didn't know how I had the income that I had, but I just continued to seem to struggle. Now I know the income that I have and continue to struggle, right? But at least I'm a lot more conscious and aware of how that's going. So I'm really proud of that. It's not an art piece and it's not, a personal goal or a gain or anything I can just attach my name to or whatever, but it is something that has given me a lot more confidence financially, and I'm really happy with it. I'm so happy with that. I could say I'm really proud of coming up with that idea. I get tons of compliments for that, so I may as well throw that out there. I've made gifts before that I've gifted, hence the term, that I was really proud of how they came out with, how people enjoyed them, and the happiness that it brought them, things like that. But otherwise, something that I know that, when I use it, it brings me joy because it just helps me stay in control of something very important, unfortunately, but whatever, was my budget calendar. Really happy with it. When did you last sing to yourself? And when did you last sing to someone else? I don't remember the last time I sang to someone else aside from karaoke, but that doesn't really count as singing to someone else. Huh. Wow. I don't know. It's been a long time. Not afraid to sing to someone else, but it's been a long time since it was like kind of like one of those you and me sort of type of moments. When did I last sing to myself? Earlier today, maybe? Lots of times I find myself just enjoying ambient music, or if I'm listening to, certain streams on YouTube or whatever. But other times when I'm singing to myself, usually probably in the shower, or especially if I know I'm going to be doing a conference call, or if I'm going to be on a phone call or something like that, or even if I knew that I was going to record Dwell On It, for example, I don't mind, singing to myself just to kind of like warm up a little bit. And what I mean by that is, I work from home, I live by myself, I keep a pretty to myself sort of thing. And so there's lots of times where, just thinking about it out loud, just depending on the circumstances of life, I might not say a word for a day or 2 days, really, just thinking about it right there. And then sometimes I just talk nonstop for 18, 19 hours until I talk myself to sleep pretty much because of how the day went. So, if I know that I just kind of want to like not sound, like I just woke up, I'll sing to myself in that sense. Not very often will I randomly sing unless I'm finding myself in a certain project where I can listen to music and not get distracted, and then I'll sing along with that. I do like singing. If you want to see, I'll just put myself out there. There was an episode a few weeks ago where I got asked to sing on the fly. I can't sing, I want to make that clear, right? I can karaoke, I can't sing, but it's right here in case you want to hear me embarrass myself. But otherwise, I think it's pretty typical. In the shower, da-da-da-da-da. But sometimes it is purpose-driven, just to kind of wake myself up a little bit, and whatever happens, happens. Are you comfortable traveling as a transgender woman? I've never traveled yet still, but again, I think that just has to do a lot with circumstances in society and so on. I have nowhere to be. Just mentioned a little bit ago about budgeting, and vacations and traveling is not budgeted. But a few episodes ago, I don't remember which one it was, but I shared it with a friend of mine not very long ago too. But I'm going to put that right here. I know in that episode was a question about, I think it was phrased along the lines of, is there anywhere that I wouldn't travel that might surprise other people, or something along those lines? But if I had to travel to go somewhere, I'll travel to go somewhere, but I'm not gonna, travel somewhere that I know is unsafe for me, or I'm going to travel somewhere if I don't need to be anywhere. But otherwise, I can't say yay or nay. I always expect the worst. I'm not gonna lie. Depending on where I am when it comes to dealing with any sort of go through the metal detector thing or whatever, and whatever happens from that happens, just because what do you have in your pants, man? I was like, well, that's a little overt, but if you must know, I don't know what that experience would be like, but again, it just kind of comes with the territory. So I don't know if the word comfortable is the right word, but I acknowledge that being a trans woman doesn't come with the same liberties as what a cis person would experience when they travel. So sorry for the kind of like the fully hiccupy answer, but I have no choice but to go through the process as the process is, should I need to go through the process. And like I said, comfortable or not, it is what it is. Whatever happens from it happens, and then I would deal with it accordingly if necessary to get dealt with. I would like to assume that things are fine when it comes to traveling, but again, our world is nothing like I would have imagined when I was younger. Even as I was getting older and getting more and more to the age of, having to come to terms with myself, which was in my 30s, I've known from my earliest memories that I am who I am, but I never believed that transitioning was ever something that was going to happen in my life. And then as I grew older and seeing that it's essentially an inevitability, but just trying to navigate that and just seeing how what I projected as the future from then. When I was a kid, literally the only thing that I needed to worry about was quicksand and acid rain. Those were the biggest fears that I had to worry about, or that I was conscious to worry about when I was a kid. Remember, I'm 41. when I, in my 30s, I was still just expecting an unkind and unaccepting world with rejection and isolation and ostracization and so on. But the violence, the flagrant hate, the divisiveness of our society, and the ability for people to feel like they can impose hate and aggression on people who they disagree with without consequence is something that I never would have imagined existing as much as it does today. Going back to the traveling thing, who knows what to expect? Later on, I'm going to the pharmacy. I always assume that it's supposed to just be an in and out, but you never know what you're going to experience. And I have to go to the pharmacy. And so whatever happens, happens. So that's the same when it comes to traveling. I'll go to where I need to go when I need to go there, and whatever the experience is like is whatever the experience is going to be. Are there any stereotypes about trans women that you definitely don't follow? I definitely don't know any stereotypes that I'm supposed to or not follow. Was it last week's episode that I was talking about gender stereotypes? I talked about it earlier, so I know there's already a link in the description of last week's episode. So take a look at that link as well. In there is a chapter about gender stereotypes. Just like I said last week, I feel like I'm on autopilot. I don't think about the things I need to do or don't do. I think about doing the things that make me most comfortable. If there's things that I don't follow in terms of stereotypes, it's not because I reject the stereotype. It's just because it's something that doesn't vibe with me. Does that make sense? So like I said last week too, that, if there's any stereotypes that I'm not following, please don't hesitate to share. But like I said, there's nothing that's part of a checklist that I feel like I'm supposed to be, here's how to be a trans woman or whatever. I don't follow that. Like I said, I do what makes me happy. I do what makes me comfortable. And that's all I can hope that other people do. If other people like to follow stereotypes apparently and they feel like it helps them have a sense of belonging or sense of comfort, great, have at her. I'm sure that there's stereotypes that I don't follow, but again, it's a subconscious thing that it's just something that I'm not interested in anyway, but it has nothing to do about not being interested in getting affiliated with, I think is the way that I'm trying to frame it. So, no? Yes? I don't know. This was fun. That was a fun little mix there. I'm really happy to have had this little selection to make a story for this week. So if you enjoyed this content, please make sure to hit like. And as I mentioned right at the beginning, please make sure to subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. I would absolutely love to have as many people see this content. And when you're subscribed, and hit that notification bell wherever that is on your screen too. Because as I mentioned about hitting like gives algorithms some nudges. If you're subscribed and you hit the notification icon, when I upload new content, which is typically once a week at least, not counting the shorts, which I try to upload daily, when you visit that video right after it gets posted, the social media platforms, so using YouTube as an example, will get kind of inspired or nudged to promote that content as well. So that notification icon and hitting like does a huge, huge, huge favor in terms of helping advance the visibility of stuff like Dwell On It, which means a ton to me. As I mentioned, direct action too, hit share. Hitting share goes straight to the people who you want to see this content to, and that means a ton to me because, as I mentioned before, my reach is only as far as I can reach, and that's where I need you, the viewer and the listener, to help out and just get this message to people who, like I said earlier, are best served to, take in the content and possibly even participate for themselves if they would like that as well too. Otherwise, let's just close this one off like I was getting to. So I want you to have a great rest of your night, have a great rest of your week, as I always love to say, and I'll talk to you later.